It's recording. Okay. All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here today. My name is Lisa DeRamos. I'm the program coordinator for Nami, Washtenaw County. And if you're unfamiliar with Nami, it stands for the National Alliance on Mental Illness. And I have a great team of volunteers with me today. I have Amanda Jang, who is our lead presenter. She works with Michigan Medicine as a research coordinator, and she focuses on suicide research. And we also have Bob Nassar, who is a longtime NAMI volunteer with lots of knowledge and experience in our different NAMI programs. And we have Andrea May, who is another NAMI volunteer and a new peer-to-peer program facilitator. And also Andrew Posner, who is a support group facilitator as well. So thank you for being here today. And a few things about NAMI. Oh no, is it not working? I know. It was working earlier. No. Okay, I might have to do it manually. Okay. So, again, if you're unfamiliar with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, we are the largest grassroots mental health association or organization in the country that's grassroots led by volunteers. And our mission is improving the lives of people who live with mental health conditions as well as their loved ones who support them. And we do that in a variety of ways. The three main ways are through our support groups like Andrew leads. These are currently offered online via Zoom, so you don't even have to leave your house to attend and connect with others who are dealing with mental health issues. We also have educational programs such as peer-to-peer, which is for those who live with mental health conditions, and family-to-family, which is for loved ones, so partners, parents, siblings, friends of those in support of those who live with mental health conditions. And we also have local advocacy initiatives, like we work with the Washtenaw Courthouse, the Mental Treatment Court. We've worked with the police, local Washtenaw police, and we've done some, we've helped them with behavioral crisis trainings, and also the Ending the Silence program, which gives mental health awareness presentations to you all.
Folks to know that everything that we offer is free, at no cost.
Yes, it's free of charge to all participants. And because most of these programs are offered online right now since the pandemic, you don't even have to go to a physical location to attend. You would just go to our website at namiwc.org to register to find out more about these programs. All right, and now I'd like to introduce Amanda. Is it working? Hopefully this is working.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the event. Oh, be more in the center. Okay. So the purpose of this presentation, Mental 101, is to cover three main topics. Oh man, it's not working.
The mouse, here, I can sit here and do the mouse.
Okay. Oh, is it working now? Let me see. It's working now. Okay. So we're covering three main topics. We're going to talk about what is mental health. Also going to discuss the signs of suicide and how we can intervene. We're also going to talk about how we can end stigma around mental health. So what is mental health? Well, if you have a brain, then you have mental health. And this can be good, bad, or somewhere in between. Having a good mental health doesn't mean that you're happy all the time, but in general, you should be able to enjoy life, feel good, and have positive ways of coping with stress. Just like physical fitness, there are ways that we can exercise our mental fitness, such as eating well, getting enough sleep. But it's important to keep in mind that even if we have these good habits in place, we must still develop mental health conditions. So just like physical condition, a mental condition is a medical condition that can influence the way that people think, feel, ability to relate to other people can also impact day-to-day functioning. However, even if you have mental condition, it doesn't have to be limiting. So my grandfather has generalized anxiety disorder, but for decades he has been a really accomplished musician in Hong Kong until his retirement. So this is just one example of how you can still accomplish your goals even if you have a mental condition. So on the presentation here, we have several examples of mental conditions, and you might have heard of some of these, such as ADHD, depression, PTSD, OCD. Even though we put these diagnoses into categories, in reality, they run on a spectrum. So why should we talk about mental health? In a community of just 100 people, 20 people may have a mental illness. 8 people may have received any mental health services, and 4 live with a severe mental health condition. And here are some more facts about mental health conditions. 1 in 4 adults has a mental health condition in a given year. 1 in 6 children has a mental health condition. And statistics have shown that mental health conditions are among the 20 leading causes of disability worldwide. And many people have more than one mental health condition at any given time, and clinically we call this comorbidity.
And just one point to make is that literally every family on the planet is impacted by mental health.
Mm-hmm.
Someone in the family most likely lives with some kind of emotional challenge or a mental health challenge. So that's something I think we hope to overcome the discrimination and stigma associated with mental health. And I think it kind of starts with the fact that it's so common.
Mm-hmm.
It so impacts every family. And so I want to make sure that point is made.
Yeah, thank you so much, Bob. The symptoms amongst those mental conditions can vary widely. We all get sad every now and then. We had a rainy day at work, we didn't do well in school, but usually these thoughts do go away as the day goes on. But those with mental condition tend to feel sad, unhappy, withdrawn, quiet, for longer duration, usually more than 2 weeks, and the emotions, behaviors are more intense and severe. They may feel anxious and worried, and these are usually accompanied by restlessness. They may also experience physical discomfort, such as stomach ache, difficulty breathing. Those who have anxiety disorder may lose sleep more easily, and those who have depression may sleep more, although in general they feel fatigued a lot. Those who have eating disorders such as anorexia nervosa and bulimia may have weight or appetite changes. And some individuals may use negative coping strategies such as using substance, drug, alcohol to cope with the stressors that they're experiencing. Generally, when we're assessing the severity of condition, we look at the 3 Ds: distress, deviance, and dysfunction. Individuals who have severe mental condition tend to experience extreme distress. They have behaviors that are out of the norm, such as self-harm, and their condition impacts their daily functioning. So there are several contributors to mental conditions, and here are 3 of them: social factors, family environment, life stressors, and society and culture. And one of the life stressors that we can all relate to is, pandemic stress, right, for the last 2 years. When we think of society and culture, we might think of food, all the wonderful things that are associated with one's culture. But in my research, when I went to Ukraine in the summer 2018, I found that culture can influence interpretation of mental health. In Ukraine, people tend to think mental health as physical health condition, and they seek holistic healers more often than conventional therapists. And there are many other more contributors, such as one's genetics and the physical environment. So in the past, a lot of research has focused on individual qualities that are social mental condition, but nowadays researchers are broadening their horizon and looking into external factors such as pollution, air quality that can influence children's cognitive ability and emotional health. The bottom line is that there's no one reason, but a combination of very complex biological, psychological, environmental factors that can influence one's mental health.
And just another comment from Bob, a summary. We really don't know what causes mental health challenges. We don't really know what causes mental illness yet. You know, we think it's genetic. We think it's a combination of all these factors. But one of the things that makes getting treatment and getting help so challenging is that we're treating the symptoms of these illnesses and not necessarily the causes. And so we don't have blood tests yet, for example. We're not at that level of science, if you will.
Yeah.
We're still a ways from understanding
Also
the
costs
human.
a lot of money to do
It costs a lot
biomarker.
of money.
Yeah.
We're still trying to understand it, but I just want to, it's possibly the best time in the history of mankind to live with these illnesses because we kind of sort of know what to do now and a lot better. But we're not there yet. We're not there yet. We have a long way to go. And that makes it really difficult for a mother, for example, to get help and get good help for their child. It's really, really a difficult challenge. And we're all in it together. We hope that resources are allocated. It's not millions of dollars, people. It's going to take billions to fix this.
Oh yeah, probably trillions for the years to come.
As the former head of the national anthem said, we need another moonshot.
Probably. So in terms of treatments, there are two main categories: conventional treatments and alternative-based treatments. And conventional treatments are usually more known and talked about. These include talk therapies and medication. You might have heard cognitive behavioral therapies, which targets the thought to change behaviors and emotion. But in the recent years, alternative-based treatments have become more and more popular, and these include actually very accessible types of programs such as yoga, mindfulness-based intervention. I don't know if you use mindfulness-based apps. I have many of these apps. Yeah, I see your hand. Yeah, I use mindfulness-based apps. The beauty of these programs, these modalities, is that anyone can really practice them, and they improve one's quality of life along with one's emotional health. The important part of seeking treatment is to find one that's tailored for you. What works best for you is a program that's for you. And the sooner you seek treatment, the better. Oh yeah, and I see a cute dog photo that reminds me of my cat. I don't know if you have a pet at home, but when I see my pet, it gives me a boost of happiness and energy. So also we have a lot of treatments. A lot of people cannot get the treatment that they need. And in Michigan alone, 51% of residents with an acute mental illness cannot receive treatment, and 22% report that they can't even receive any kind of treatment at all. So why may this be? So put on your thinking cap. Why may people, although they know they need treatment, why may they not be able to get the treatment that they need? Yeah, they know. It's expensive. The cost. Yeah, that's very. Yeah, the perspective. Yeah. That's very true. So cost and
Even availability of providers is a big one.
exactly. Bob and I were just talking about this morning how Michigan hospitals are just packed with patients who are on a long waiting list. How many, Bob? The one for Depression Center.
Well, the Depression Center currently, I'm on the Patient and Family Centered Care Committee there, and they have a waiting list of 2,400 people. And so they're calling, every day they're calling prospective patients saying, because they want to try, to their credit, in my opinion, they're trying to prevent a situation where you're waiting 6 months and then being told, no, you have the wrong insurance. We can't help you. So, or something like that. So they're calling people, doing triage or doing, preliminary evaluation and letting people know right up front, or as soon as they can, whether they can be helpful to them or not. And about 70% of the people that they're calling, they have to say, I'm sorry, we can't help you. So it's a real difficult, and this, our community is one of the better ones in the state of Michigan and nationally, but it's just a really, really difficult, challenging situation out there. So we're with you. Everyone's trying their best to to help through this very, very difficult time.
Yeah.
Let's see here.
What I mean, that if people with mental illness, they don't accept that they are ill. They reject the reality of being sick.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I am not crazy, I am okay.
That's, we have a program on the state trainer for the family to family 8-week education class. That's the number one challenge is how can I convince my son or daughter that they need help?
Good.
They're in denial. And that's actually, I have a daughter who lives with schizophrenia. She's not doing very
My
well
daughter today,
right now. And it absolutely, years and years ago, just blew my mind when I was told, well, one of the symptoms of schizophrenia is denial of the illness. I went, what? That does not compute, But I get it now. And it's like a blind spot for many people because who would choose? And yet it's so common and anyway.
you cannot take them to the hospital if they cannot take the medication. It's very difficult to.
That's
deal
very
with
true.
mental illness.
Yeah.
A 72-hour hold does not necessarily mean 72-hour hold any longer.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of what I run into is that people know they need help, but they find it overwhelming to seek out a place that one, as you were alluding to, Bob, to get insurance that they have. And two, even just to help navigate the system,
Yeah.
get a triage of wherever they're at. So like healthcare and how do I start is a really big barrier for people.
That's so true.
And on the theme of trying to provide resources and hope and whatnot, we had a mental health millage in 2016 and passed about over 70% of the vote as like a mandate. And at least on paper and the rhetoric from community mental health is that anyone in Washtenaw County, regardless of ability to pay, can receive services from community mental health. We've heard some, it's not always 100%, but that is the rhetoric, and we applaud that.
I'm going to rebut that just for a second. Only dealing with community mental health, they mainly take people only with schizophrenia, or they've been put in the hospital and they exhibit symptoms and then they're connected with CMH. But trying to get an appointment with CMH with depression or anxiety or anything else other than schizophrenia, they're trying to take.
That's so true.
I'm sorry to hear that. I get services. And you'll hear my story later, but I have the symptoms that you were saying.
Yeah.
And they see me, but I do know it's hard to get in.
Yeah.
I've heard it's really hard to get an intake.
Right, like I've taken many clients to get an intake and they're like, oh, I'm sorry, just because you suffer with anxiety and depression, if you call your insurance to see who's gonna be able to take you because we can't. We never have that's on, like heavier mental illness, with schizophrenia and all those spokes of schizophrenia and things like that, which is really sad and depressing when you're trying to seek out as a client to get mental health, knowing that you need it, and you're being stopped. So that's where, I also said that, where do you start? How can you have the backing to get along with this, to go into mental health? I'm pretty happy that I'm going to start therapy with clients soon, so hopefully it's just one more person will be able to be out there to help, but
Yeah.
it's sad. But I want to also preface, they just received another millage, didn't they? CMH received another CARES grant from the Rescue Act Plan, so I think they did receive some money through that. So hopefully they'll open up their doors more, but it's sad.
Yeah. You know, sometimes what's considered mental health diagnosis is such a political thing too. You know, one of my professors who, you know, he was trying to put hoarding disorder into DSM-5, which is a manual of different diagnoses, and there were just such, you know, backlash from the insurance companies, you know, because they don't want to provide funding for those who struggle with hoarding behaviors. Although, you know, if you know someone with hoarding behaviors, you know they need to seek help, you know. But they were just so reluctant on putting into the DSM-5 because they don't want to fund certain conditions.
But
Yeah.
for those of you who don't know what that is, the DSM-5 is the fifth version of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, which is sort of the guidebook.
For clinician and for diagnosing mental conditions.
But it's in there.
It's-
hoarding is
it's in there
the
now.
DSM-5.
It's in there now, but it wasn't there before. The behavior was under anxiety before. It wasn't considered a separate condition. And my professor and his colleague fought for it to be separate, so people can get the tailored intervention that they need. Yeah.
Don't they have to diagnose with the European numbers though?
Yeah.
In order to get it, so does this translate to European numbers?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So like the European, basically DSM-5
Yeah, they
has
have
their
a
own
separate one.
set of numbers that the insurance company uses in order to bill the insurance company.
Yeah.
So that's how they get you.
Yeah, that's another complexity, how different countries have different manuals, you know, different ways of viewing mental health conditions. Yeah. But yeah, thank you for your contributions. You know, we covered many reasons why people may not seek the help they need. And we're gonna go on to signs of suicide and how we can intervene. You know, unfortunately, not everyone gets the treatment they need, and due to worsening symptoms, they experience suicide ideation and behaviors. And suicide is very complex. It's not caused by a single event. It's usually caused by an underlying condition. In the work that I am in, I work in the psychiatric emergency services, recruiting families for research studies. Those who come in suicide ideation tend to have clinical depression or clinical anxiety or another type of mental condition. The suicide is quite prevalent in our world, but it is preventable. So here are some statistics and facts on suicide. So in 2019, more than 47,000 people die by suicide. So that's one death per 11 minutes. And let that sink in a bit, you know, one death every 11 minutes. Millions have seriously thought about suicide, may plan or attempted suicide. In youth in particular, suicide is the second leading cause of death, with accidents being number one. Suicide is very, very close. Suicide rates differ by gender and youth. Males tend to attempt suicide more than females, but research has found that females tend to disclose suicide ideation more than males. That's done by Dr. Matthew. The research is done by Dr. Matthew Knock from Harvard University. There's this disparity in suicide rates in LGBTQ youth, and these are the stats from the Trevor Project. And I encourage you to actually look into Trevor Project because they did an extensive study on suicide in LGBTQ youth. And what they found is that compared to cisgender youth, LGBTQ youth are more likely to think about suicide and also attempt suicide. And what do you think might be the reason that this disparity exists, that LGBTQ youth tend to have higher rates of suicide ideation attempt?
I mean, look at how hard it is for some kids to come out and what their college families respond to them. And yeah, I mean, I feel like that's a super obvious one.
Mm-hmm.
Rejection from society.
Mhm.
The society hasn't, fully embraced queer community yet still, and so yeah.
That's very true. And I hear with the, you know, teens I work with and research, you know, they experience a lot of bullying in school, you know, social rejection. It's hard for them to make friends, and they're usually more isolated compared to cisgender youth. Bullied.
Hide who you are, it can be,
Yeah.
so yeah, somebody spending their entire life and pretending something they're not, yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah. This is something that no one should ever have to experience, right? Being something that, you know, they're not having to hide something that's so important to them. So on the presentation are some, oh yeah, oh,
I'm gonna pass
statistics.
around, I guess folks made some handout. This is some data specific to the state of Michigan. So feel free, you don't have to take this, but feel free to take one if you want to get more information about our state. If I may, Amanda, two very concerning trends is, as you mentioned, young women are, the rates of the trend of young women dying by suicide is going way up. It's very, very concerning. Young African American men, the rates of suicide are going way up. It's very, very concerning. So, especially with the youth, and you mentioned this, right, that it's the second leading cause of death among teenagers
in this country.
The accidents is suicide. Very, very challenging, concerning, and
Urgent. I think that's urgent to discuss.
I'll
Yeah.
just say two other things. Access to pills is a very, and access to weapons and access to pills. And in case you all know, there are gun locks and gun safes and so on and so forth. So we encourage families to, if you have weapons in the house, do not make them easily accessible.
Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon.
Hey there.
Hello, welcome.
And then there are lockable pill boxes too.
Yeah. It's just how surprising, with the teens I talk to, how they get all these pills and their families just don't even know, until they come in for a psychiatric evaluation. So it's just something to keep in mind. Just share this knowledge to the broader community. Don't just let the knowledge stay here. Thank you, Bob, for your contribution. On the presentation, here are some common warning signs of suicide. Those who are thinking about suicide tend to talk. Sometimes they don't talk about it, but those who do talk tend to talk about how they're not going to be here tomorrow. You might also see suicide notes, written in diaries, how they are hopeless, they're trying to find a way to attempt suicide. Withdrawal from family and friends is common, and engage in risky activities. It's also very common too. Bob often reminds us that we all know our loved one and our friends, close friends' baseline, right? We know how they are when they're okay. So if your instinct tells you that something is off, most likely that something is off. It's important to reach out and help. And do you want to add, Bob, to that, to the baseline? Because that's what I learned from you.
Yeah, well, it's you can trust some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool mom. So,
Yeah.
The point is that I'm trying to make is use your instinct, use your judgment, and moms are pretty good at this. We acknowledge that, and dads, we're getting better, but I honestly defer to my wife in terms of really having a good rapport, understanding, empathy, whatnot. And every family is different. It might be the dad in some families, but the point is to trust your instinct and your judgment. If you think somebody is in trouble and they need help, encourage them to get help or give them help.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So like what Bob said, reach out and respond, take action immediately. You can ask them the question, are you thinking about suicide? Are you harming yourself? And many of you might worry that, asking these questions might, increase the likelihood of suicide behavior, but that's not true actually. Extensive research has shown that people tend to, feel better after talking about, their emotions and their thoughts, because it shows you that you care about them. Don't leave them alone. Share if this is applicable, share relevant information with the mental contact. And there's a 24/7 suicide prevention lifeline. There's the number up here that you can call. There's also text-based lifeline nowadays, crisis text intervention. You can use that as well. You can go to emergency room, or you can call 911. But if you do call 911, make sure to let them know that it's a psychiatric emergency.
I don't know if you know this, but that number that's on the previous slide, that's a 7-digit number or whatever, that's going to change in July this year to 988. I didn't understand how much goes into pulling that off in terms of having resources available. But so much more accessible, I think, for someone to dial 3 digits who needs help, is in distress, rather than 7 digit.
Yeah, that is very, very true.
988. In July, we have to wait because they're getting it geared up.
Oh, wonderful, it's going to be a 3-digit number now. Excellent.
So much easier for the community. Oh my. I don't know why it took so many years, but oh my. Thank goodness at least we will have it in July, than ever, I guess. Starting a conversation is very important when you see someone who's struggling. So let's talk about some conversation starters. Place yourself in a situation where you see your loved one or friend who's struggling and you see maybe some self-harm marks on their arm. You approach them. How do you start a conversation with them? I know that we have some professionals here, right? Andrew, you're going to social work, right? we have some professionals here, How do you start the conversation?
I just ask
Mm-hmm.
like what it is, like what happened, like what happened, and then
Yeah.
see what they say.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I mean, not go there first, I mean, just say, hey, how are you doing?
Mhm.
Or, yeah,
I mean, yeah, well, I'm assuming that I've already said that, but once I
Yes.
notice something,
Yes.
once I notice something, I'm going to inquire because I just want to see what they say, because even if they deny, anything happened or not come right out and say what it is, at least I have an idea, and I have to know that.
That's very right. That's very true. So thank you. So like we said, start with something maybe more simple, just something to ease into the conversation. How are you? Is everything all right? You don't seem yourself. And that gradually, yeah, exactly. We gradually go into, the more sensitive aspect. Sometimes you might want to share that I had a bad week too, and how was yours? This is something that has worked with me in the past, But if you use this kind of introduction, don't make it all about yourself, right? And like, a participant said, you can go in deeper in the conversation if they're willing to open up and ask them, have you had these thoughts before? Are you thinking about suicide right now? Are you thinking about harming yourself right now? So these are very good, starters. Ask relevant questions, like we talked about, have you felt this way before? And sometimes you might be met with silence, and this happens a lot. People don't want to talk about it. But it's important to just let them know that you're there for them, even if they don't share their thoughts with you immediately, right? Nonverbal gestures matter. You don't want to turn away from them, right? You want to meet their eyes, and nod, pay attention to them. This is how you show care, how you show empathy. This is, when they're talking. So listen with empathy without judgment. Don't assume, what they're going through. Encourage them to get help as soon as possible. Does anyone else have questions about this topic? Certain conversations always so difficult.
The shutdown thing, you're right, it's a very common thing people do when they get emotionally overwhelmed or they withdraw, like a blank and it just goes, they go to their other place, where they're just not hearing anything. And so I think it's still important to acknowledge that, like I can see that you're having some kind of reaction right now. And, I just want to be able to come back and talk to this, when you don't feel like you're having this exact reaction, like you're not feeling so strongly, and then we can have a conversation, but I just want you to know that I'm here, I care. But, just acknowledging that, I recognize there's something happening here. So they don't just feel like they're just, because even with that shutdown, that can cause like anxiety for them. They're like, oh my God, now I can sit here and it's so uncomfortable. Now I'm shut down.
That's so true. Yeah, I've also met, a child who just wouldn't even talk during public scenario too. She would just stop talking to you when she felt overwhelmed, but to her, what helped was drawing, something that's nonverbal. Yeah. Sometimes, I remember working with trauma survivors, it was so hard for them to even talk about their trauma, but it was much easier if they can just depict it in the artwork illustration. That's another method to also start a conversation, non-verbally.
Sometimes it can be helpful if, use your instinct to point out something specific. In other words, I've noticed you you haven't done your homework this week,
Mhm.
you know, or I've noticed that you don't want to go to school this week. You know, something specific that is sort of undeniable,
Mhm.
and that can serve as a starter,
Yeah.
discussion starter. And then this is easy to say, hard for me to do, but our culture tends to be uncomfortable with silence.
Mhm.
And so being silent when you are trying to create a communication with somebody can draw someone out. Sometimes just waiting, be patient.
Yeah. And oftentimes those, at least the teens I work with, they've been silent for so long that they're used to being quiet. They're used to thinking that no one's there for them. So yeah.
Do you ever notice, sometimes with the youth, that they want you to see it? And like they do things.
They do. Mm-hmm.
And then and then they'll even gesture about it, and then you kind of got to pick up on that. Cause like if you don't say anything, I feel like it just gets worse.
Yeah, of course.
I'm just wondering.
Yeah.
Because I know I haven't had that experience
Yeah.
before.
I mean, all teens are different. Every human being is different, right? Yeah, there are teens who want you to, take them to a psychiatric emergency center and get psychiatric evaluation because they know that they need the help. But yeah, so I think what's most important is tailoring your approach, your conversation to the actual teen you're talking to or to the family member, the loved one you're talking to, right? I think that goes along with your point. So let's talk about stigma, which is the last component of our presentation, but probably one of the most important topics that we need to talk about. So this is one of the main reasons why people might not want to share the mental health conditions as we talked about. Stigma is the negative belief or idea about someone who's different from us. You may have heard on social media that individuals who have mental conditions are violent, but that's not true. That's not 100% true, but it's a myth that perpetuates the stigma. What usually happens is that those with mental conditions are oftentimes the victims of violence. So that's why it's important that we consistently talk about mental health, not just here, but everywhere we go to. And we need to talk about the ignorance, the avoidance, the reluctance surrounding mental health, the way we talk about mental health. And I'm going to show you this video. I think it was filmed in Singapore. It speaks volume to stigma around mental health and why we should talk about mental health and the stigma associated with it.
You can be born perfectly rich, have a very good lifestyle, have parents who care very well for you. I don't think mental health issues discriminate against anyone of any race, gender, or social background.
Thank you.
Hi, nice to meet
Hi.
you. You can see.
My name is Nicole. I'll be your moderator for this discussion.
I'm Nicholas. Today, I'm going to ask you a few questions about mental health in Singapore. What do you know about mental illness?
I just know there's depression.
Oh,
How do you say that? Bipolar disorder.
the wire short circuit.
This guy's crazy, sell this kind of words.
That's not you.
Would you hire somebody with mental health condition?
Or probably make them work in at inside.
Simple, cleaner, or some simple job like that.
Either they hurt themselves or they're going to hurt someone else. Then if you're a mental illness, you apply for a job. But who in the right sense would really want to take you?
Would you date somebody who has a mental health condition?
Some of them will get quite manipulative. They say like, if you break up with me, I'll cut myself or I'll kill myself.
And then sometimes they tend to post unreasonable things, such as like a small thing that happened, and then they'll make a big fuss out of it.
I cannot handle. I don't know how to handle. How would you react to, a friend or family member who's diagnosed with mental illness?
The bridging needs to be the family and not a stranger.
不是专业医生，我们可能处理不了。
If possible, I will just stay away as far as possible.
搞笑耶，最好是不要靠近他。I didn't introduce myself fully. I suffer from clinical depression.
I was clinically diagnosed with depression. I'm living in recovery.
And I overcame it. I wrote a letter that I would like you to read out to me about.
12 years is a long time to live with a mental health condition.
In the 12 years that I've been diagnosed with depression,
This is what I've learned.
I've learned that the greatest battles we fight are the ones with ourselves.
I've learned that most conversations about employment end the moment I retrieve my diagnosis. I've learned that shame is something society teaches you. I've learned how to say sorry for showing symptoms of my condition.
I've learned that friends can disappear, and I will never hear from them again.
I've learned that family doesn't always know how to support you, no matter how much you need them.
I've learned that hope is a little voice that whispers pain.
I've learned that recovery is a process. I've learned that one small crack doesn't mean I'm broken.
I've learned that I have an illness, but this illness is not my identity.
so sorry that you have been through this.
I'm so
Do you have any questions you want to ask me?
I wonder if this clicker's gonna work for me again. There we go. So what did you think about the video? I think the first time I watched it, I had tears in my eyes. It's so relatable, isn't it? Yeah. So language is powerful, and you may have heard of person first versus identity first language. Have you heard of these terminology? I see someone shaking their head. Andrew, what do you know about person first versus identity first language?
Yeah, so identity first language tends to encourage people to define themselves by their mental health condition. So, as I'll speak about later, I was diagnosed with social anxiety disorder, and so I might say like, I'm a socially anxious person. Would be one way of speaking that would make me feel like all I was trapped in my diagnosis, as opposed to person first language, which would be like, no, actually that's a part of my experience sometimes, but there's so much more to me than that. So I would say I'm a person who experiences social anxiety, and even that simple linguistic flip can change someone's perspective and also reduce stigma towards others.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. And what I actually learned from one of my colleagues at University of Michigan, who Bob introduced me to, she actually said that some people might prefer identity first language over person first language. So what you can do is ask them what they prefer. And whatever they say, it's important that we continue to talk about mental health in a mindful way. So after this presentation, what do you think are some of the ways you can reduce stigma in your community?
Talk about mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
Say, let people know that it's okay, and that probably all of our population suffers from some sort of mental illness, whether they recognize it or not, or whether they want to admit it or not, but it's okay.
It's okay. Yeah. Yeah, that's very
vulnerable, and yeah, self-disclosure, I know social workers and things, you have certain boundaries that the therapist therapeutic relationship around that, but, yeah, sure, disclosing to people, your own struggles and things can certainly help people to share their own.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always like to tell, because I work in field therapy too, and I always like to tell clients that it's just like when you take care of your physical health, you need to be taking care of your mental health too.
Yeah.
So that's important. And your brain regulates your whole body.
Yeah. Oh, yes. That's so true. That's so true. So I heard about taking sick days. People usually associate with some kind of physical health condition, but you can take sick days, wellness days for your mental health too, right?
One thing that's happening in your community, are you aware that the Ypsilanti Public Library is doing quite a bit to address mental health, especially with youth? And we can send them the link to that article. They're what do they call it on Saturday mornings? They call them corner chats. They're kind of working with corner health, and there's a social worker, therapist type person who to respect the needs of the community, they're kind of sort of staying away from the phrase mental health. They're calling it happiness or emotional health or whatever. But they're doing mindfulness things on Saturday morning. Kelly Scott is the librarian. Jonathan Edwards is the therapist or the social worker. For kids, they have subscription packs, they call it, which is basically take-home stuff to promote, interacting in a healthy way on social media and so on and so forth, and games and puzzles and like comic book kind of stuff. And so they're really the library is really stepping up, and I applaud that. It's amazing. It's great. It's something they should know about.
That's good to know because they're gonna come to the fair that Nami's gonna be at. So now I know the name. So I can contact them, make sure they're there too. Oh, thank you for that.
Yeah. So as we talked about, one of the ways is to talk about mental health in your community. You can also share links on social media, but be aware of the kind of posts you reshare. We live in technological era where, there are, fake statistics out there. There are posts that, that just, they show inaccurate data. One of the things I look for when I'm on social media is to see where the source came from. Usually, sources like Nami, American Psychological Association, National Institutes of Health. They fact check their sources. So it's good to share resources on social media, but be aware of the type of resources that you share. You can call out people if they're using stigmatizing language. It takes courage to do this. But if we want to end silence around mental health, then we have to be brave. You can wear lime green wristband. I think Lisa put some. Yeah. She put some wristbands over there, the green wristbands. So lime green is, a symbol for mental health, for destigmatizing mental health. And please take one before you leave. And as we talked about, one of the ways we can reduce stigma is to share our stories. And it's my pleasure to introduce two of our amazing volunteers, Andrea May and Andrew Posner, to come up here and share their stories, their journeys with mental health. Thank you, everyone. Yes, yeah.
Suicide thoughts. I think that they do, school shootings. I think that
Yes.
That's related
Yes.
to suicide.
Mm-hmm.
They have these suicide thoughts and they're probably thinking I can deal with this by making people feel the way I feel, killing them and making them feel the way that they feel.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Yeah, that's so very unique insight. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing.
And the other thing, as a word of caution, a number of people who have committed those acts, they're on video games, violent video games.
Very violent. Yeah. Yeah.
It's really, you gotta be careful with that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. There are usually signs of them wanting to, go into school and do that, right? The social media posts. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. It's just, oh, okay.
I have a question to ask.
Oh, back up.
I'm a mental health patient. Okay. And, a lot of people tell me it's not good, cause I don't take my medication on, and I don't think that when I get depressed, I used to be an addict. I used to smoke things, and I had a bad problem. But I've been putting up the crack for 9 years now. So,
yeah.
Sometimes at night I have bad nightmares.
Yeah.
Like, I can't sleep. I see monsters. I see all kind of stuff. It look like I'm wide awake. I've been off my medication for a year. But now I think I need, because I get so angry. I can get upset about this stuff, and I don't understand why. You know, but I'm going to mental health when I have a 3:30 appointment at 3:30 because I feel suicide last week. And I live alone. And I can harm myself any time. But you know what I do most of the time? One of my workers used to tell me, go look in the mirror. Look at yourself. You know, and I do that, and it helps. It helps me. I go look in the mirror, and I'm like, God, help me, please, help me. I'm not ready to die. But I be so, like now, I'm in my depression. You know, I'm under a lot of depression. I just broke up with my boyfriend that I've been with for 11 years. And I'm going through that. And I'm going through even fussing at my consultation, especially my oldest daughter. She's like, Mom, you know you need your bed. But I feel that I don't need it. But after last night, I feel I need to get back on my bed.
Yeah.
Medication is important, I guess. I don't know. Some patients need medication. Like I say, when I have to close my daughter, she doesn't take her medication. And I say, I have high blood pressure. I have to take medication every day. Medical illness. It's an illness. You need your medication every day. The same like heart medication, high blood pressure medication, cholesterol. You need to keep track of those medications every day, like every other condition, because it's a condition that can help you with medicine.
Yeah. Yeah, my aunt has schizophrenia, and what my grandfather did for a long time was dissolve the medication and the water, you know. So initially, she was refusing, but then slowly she actually accepted it. You know, it's acceptance is hard.
Like, if I stop taking my medication, high blood pressure, I will die.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah. But I really like the mirror message though. How you look yourself in the mirror and say that, you know. I think it's very important for people to look at themselves in the mirror and think that there's so much more to them than their trauma and their mental health. You know, that they've done so much in this world, you know, they should know and see it. Yeah.
Yeah, we have this program called peer-to-peer education program for people who live with mental health challenges, and one of the goals in what you said, I think, is really powerful, that you're aware
Mm-hmm.
that you need help sometimes,
Yeah.
you know, and so much with my daughter who lives with schizophrenia, she sometimes just doesn't think she needs the help and stuff. So to be aware and to be able to look at in the mirror,
yourself,
stand
yeah.
back and kind of look
Know
at
the
things,
truth, yeah.
I commend you for that. I think it's going to be helpful.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you everyone. I'm gonna hand over to our amazing volunteer Andrea.
If you have questions for any of our volunteers, we're going to do a Q&A after Andrea's and Andrew's story. So please hold your questions till after they share. Thank you.
Do you want that up so it's not in your face?
I'll do it. Yeah. Just push the B on there. Let's see. This is the greatest PowerPoint thing ever. There you go.
Okay.
Isn't that so much better?
Yes. Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea May. It's a pleasure meeting with you today. This is my story. So, I'm sitting in the living room with my little sisters, right? And everything is fine. We're laughing and joking around, and it's a great time. And then I think, oh no, this is it. This is the day I'm going to die. This feeling of dread and anxiousness comes across me. I feel like I have to go to the bathroom. I don't know why I feel like I have to go, but I do. My eye is twitching. My hands are sweating. My heart is pounding so loudly I can't think. I can't breathe. I'm scared. And I feel like this is it. I'm going to die. I've had these feelings since I was about 10 years old. 10 years old is when I had my first panic attack. Here it is, and I'm 33 years old, still suffering with panic attacks. In summer of 2012, I was diagnosed with chronic depression, anxiety disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and borderline personality disorder. In 2020, I was diagnosed with ADHD. This is not who I am. I repeat, this is not who I am. This is only my diagnosis. Finding out a diagnosis isn't a sentence, it's something to be proud of because it's like, finally, I know why I've always felt so different. I know why I've always had this feeling of dread and anxiousness. I know why I always feel sadness when I should feel happy. Today, I want to tell you a story about myself. I struggled a lot with my emotions when I was younger, but nobody paid attention to me. When I think back on my first experience with depression and being suicidal, I remember being about 12 or 13. I was sitting on the floor and I wanted to hurt myself. I was hurting so bad inside, but all I could do is cry and cry until tears wouldn't come out anymore. That night, I ended up not self-harming, but later on in life, the habit came back for me. It wasn't until I was an adult that I started having serious symptoms. It actually started when I was in college. I attended Saginaw Valley State University. While in college, I experienced extreme stress from my classes, which triggered my anxiety disorder, the first of many disorders to come. While suffering with many mental health challenges, I also suffer with a learning disability that created even more stress and anxiety. With those two reasons combined and with everyday life, it caused me to end up dropping out of college. At that point, I went straight into treatment. Over the years, I got help from a few different mental health services. I started with one-on-one therapy at my local community mental health center. A few years later, I decided to try medication, but because of the stigma associated with it, I was terrified. But I felt like if I didn't at least try, things would never get better. I would continue to suffer. And I don't believe anybody should suffer, especially if they don't have to. Trying medications, one-on-one therapy, and different educational and support groups was what worked best for me. It wasn't easy finding a good plan. It takes patience, but I suggest not giving up until you find the right fit for you. For me, one of the most important things I did was sign up for DBT, Dialectical Behavioral Therapy, through Washtenaw County Community Mental Health Center, and also taking Nami's 8-week peer-to-peer group. They call them groups, but I call them classes because you learn so much vital information. Like with DBT, we learn about mindfulness, distress tolerance, interpersonal effectiveness, and emotional regulation. With peer-to-peer, we have discussions and exercises we do, but what I got out of it was also the love, the support they've shown me. I'm proud to say I not only completed NAMI's 8-week peer-to-peer, but I also volunteered, and now I am also a leader for peer-to-peer class. From working with NAMI, I see I'm not alone in this. It truly feels like a supportive family. We all get different things from NAMI, but for me, it was the knowledge I got from the class, the lifelong friendships I've made. From talking to others, I see I'm not alone in this. And peer to peer, they even taught me a new skill every class. I remember the second one was a big one. We studied the brain and how it worked hand in hand with mental health. I learned a lot about different diagnoses and even more about mine. This is my story. I wish I had more time to share, but I want you to remember this. You are strong for supporting your loved ones. You are strong for asking for help. You are strong for getting the help that you need. Don't ever be ashamed of your mental health. Thank you. Now, Andrew will come.
Hi everyone, my name is Andrew. I'm 28 years old and I'm on my way to becoming a social worker, hopefully. I'm also passionate about helping people with different experiences and perspectives understand each other, and spend about half of my free time watching videos of interesting and/or cute animals. I've also been a musician for most of my life. As enriching and fulfilling as music was for me growing up, as I improved, I started to feel more and more that pressure of perfectionism. When I was 16 years old, I experienced a series of severe panic attacks while performing in front of hundreds of people. My entire body would shake, my head would feel like it was on fire, and I couldn't keep playing or really even think. A few times I almost fainted. I imagine it was probably pretty close to what having a heart attack feels like. These traumatic events led to intense anxiety that would arise in almost every social situation. I was constantly afraid of making mistakes and being judged by other people, and I couldn't open up about my inner life and be vulnerable with even my few friends. When I would occasionally mention these experiences to other people, I'd usually hear back something like, "Aw, you're just shy." It was so much more than that. If you can imagine your heart racing as you call a restaurant to order takeout, or skipping a class that you actually like because you're convinced the teacher's going to shame you for being just a couple minutes late, or staying completely quiet at a group dinner because you don't want to say the wrong things, that is a little bit of what social anxiety disorder can feel like, constantly feeling trapped by what you believe other people will think about you. And actual public speaking, I would do anything to get out there. I went to college to become a composer, which involves a fair amount of social appearances and networking and developing personal relationships. And so my diagnosis also really limited my career path. There were days when I would think myself into a panic attack while just sitting alone in my apartment, imagining all the terrible things other people were going to say about my work and my words. 6 years passed before I started seeking help, because I was convinced other people would see me as somehow weak or feeling that distressed by the simplest interactions. It really wasn't until I started to accept and become friends with my own mind, just the way it was, that I felt confident enough to ask for help. The more I considered the events and the beliefs that created the social anxiety, the more it just seemed like some natural process rolling along. So blaming myself didn't make sense anymore. And when I would sometimes have a moment of self-compassion for all the pain and isolation I had been through, that felt really healing. Social anxiety started to feel less personal. Not something that was permanently wrong with me, just something that happened. Gradually, I opened up and started to get support. My parents are really great in most of the important ways, but their beliefs and the way they raised me encouraged the perfectionism that created the social anxiety in the first place. So at first, I wasn't comfortable talking to them. But by my early 20s, I had a few friends and a girlfriend from college, and they became my network of trust. It was scary, opening up to them for the first time and sharing what I went through in social situations. But once I was willing to take that leap and trust them with this really private, intense stuff, they were just so accepting and supportive of what I was going through. And because I genuinely enjoyed spending time with these people, they started convincing me to go with them to small social events, just a bit, to give me a little evidence that it wouldn't kill me. It also really felt good to know that there were people around me who knew what I was going through and who had my back and were looking out for me. So I really don't think I would be doing as well as I am today if it weren't for those friends. This all created a positive chain reaction that helped me speak about social anxiety more and more and more to other friends and to my teachers and eventually my family. I was usually surprised by how many people I spoke to could relate to my challenges and how accepting they were of what I was going through, because even if social anxiety isn't that intense or constant for most people, almost everyone knows something of what it's like to feel awkward and insecure around other people. It's totally normal. So I wish I had opened up about this a lot sooner. Maybe I wouldn't have felt so isolated for so long. A doctor worked with me to find a medication that I could take before public events to let me get through them okay. That medication was very helpful in the short term, but I haven't needed it for many years now. I also developed some healthy habits we've all heard, eating more healthily and exercising and sleeping around 8 hours a night, and that helped stabilize my overall mood. Eventually, I found a therapist who trained me in the treatment methods that have been very successful, and I'll just run through those for you in a nutshell. First, cognitive behavioral therapy, which Amanda mentioned. It's kind of like practicing noticing, not believing the kinds of thoughts that trigger anxiety and depression. 2, mindfulness meditation, which for me was really the key. That's being aware of our present moment experiences in a way that's both calming and helpful for learning about our mental habits. And 3, exposure therapy, which is voluntarily putting yourself in potentially stressful and triggering situations so you can practice being more comfortable and less afraid when they come up in the future. Everyone's treatment path looks different, but that's what worked for me. So now, after many years of this daily practice and inner work, when social anxiety arises in me, I don't feel pushed around by it. It's now something that I know how to be with rather than something I have to fight against. And the fear of an experience always feels worse than the actual experience itself. I still notice the difference between when I have been keeping up with my treatment plan and when I haven't. So for me, recovery is still an ongoing process. Lots of days I still want to be a hermit, but now I'm a happy hermit. I also really enjoy speaking to groups about social anxiety and facilitating a Nami support group for young adults with mental health conditions. These are some of the most rewarding things that I've ever done. They would have been completely unthinkable for me just a few years ago. Success and recovery for me boil down to courage. At first it was the courage to hope for a better way of life for myself and the courage to seek help. Then it became, the courage to get out of bed in the morning when I knew I would have to be in public all day. Or maybe the courage to have that difficult conversation with a friend or a family member or a coworker. But really, every day, it's the courage to be more accepting and gentle with myself and just trust that it's okay to relax and to make mistakes and to just be a messy, complicated person in a messy, complicated world. I mentioned at the beginning that I'm on my way to becoming a social worker. If a friend 10 years ago had told me that my professional calling would literally be talking to people all day, I would have asked if they needed help. But I'm going for it, and I've never felt better or more whole, even when it's frightening. So what I would like you to remember is that being diagnosed with a mental health condition is not the end of your hopes and dreams. It's just the beginning. It is possible to recover and feel happier and more balanced. That journey to wellness might be difficult, but every single step in the right direction is worth the effort. And that's because no matter your challenges or your diagnosis or your friends or your family members, and no matter how horrible things might seem right now, there is always, always hope. Thank you so much for your anxiety-provoking attention.
I just want to thank you for putting yourself out there and allowing yourself to be vulnerable and attention-filled space for you, for both of you. I think it's really awesome.
And just another note, so all of our programs that we offer, like Bob mentioned, are free of charge, and you can find out more about them at our website. I'll pull it up now just so you can see it. And I'll show you where to